On June 23, 2016, the British voted to leave the EU. 52% voted for leave, 48% for remain. A decade-long dispute over the self-image of the United Kingdom was resolved. The country remained divided. The gunpowder smoke subsided only slowly, and the exit process dragged on. The EU exit was not formally completed until January 31st in 2019. And a last-minute Brexit deal could at least avert total chaos at the turn of this year. Brexit is and will remain a tragedy in British continental European history, says Stephanie Pieper, who witnessed the whole drama as ARD correspondent in London from 2014 to 2018. That's the German public broadcaster number one. 7 wavy lines, one below the other, painted in different shades of blue. This is what the logo of the British G7 presidency looked like. It was intended to illustrate the bond between the 7 leading industrial nations, which are supposedly on the same wavelength, who face global challenges together, from corona to climate protection. This wave logo also underlined that an island nation is chairing the G7. A country spread over 2 islands, the British and the northern part of the Irish. A land completely surrounded by water, a country that is separated from the European continent, if only by its geography, but also in spirit. The Conservative government in London is flirting with this island image and, since the Brexit vote, has at the same time tried not to portray itself as isolated. It rather postulates a global Britain. Britain may have lost its empire. Britain may have left the EU. Britain may have voluntarily made itself smaller on the world stage. No matter. We were someone. We are someone. We stay someone. Brexit or not. Global Britain. The picturesque coast of Cornwall serves Prime Minister Boris Johnson as a backdrop to underpin his claim among the G7 partners. But the unity of the rulers on display in front of the cameras couldn't hide the fact that Brexit has driven a wedge between Great Britain and its allies. Cornwall, by the way, a region in which a majority of voters voted in favor of leaving the EU 5 years ago, including many farmers and fishermen against their own financial interests, as they at least have realized now. One of the many Brexit paradoxes. On June 24th in 2016, the day after the EU referendum, dawn was dawning. It's exactly 20 minutes to 5 a.m. when the BBC presenter announced, "The British people have spoken and the answer is, we're out." A moment of shock. Goosebumps moment. At that time, the United Kingdom set sail for a new course after more than 4 decades of membership out of the European Union. What follows in London is political chaos, not for days, weeks, months, but for years. Political operations and the state apparatus are first paralyzed and then absorbed by Brexit. David Cameron lets others spoon up the soup he gave the country as Prime Minister, as we would say in German. His successor, the untalented Mrs. May, wrote the historic resignation letter to Brussels, then tried to square the Brexit circle and inevitably failed. That clears the stage for him, Boris Johnson. Without turning the spotlight on this figure, it's hard to understand why the British voted for leave with a narrow majority 5 years ago and what has happened since then. Not least because of career considerations, Johnson took the side of the Brexiteers at the beginning of 2016 and immediately became their most powerful advocate. As a politician with an unmistakable feeling for moods, he registers earlier than others that the political tectonics of his country has become fragile, and that the EU is perfectly suited as a scapegoat, to which all undesirable developments can be blamed. In the end, after a few detours, Johnson is rewarded for his risky game by moving to 10 Downing Street. Because of his behavior, however, the Prime Minister enjoys neither the trust nor the respect of his Western partners, according to Matthew Paris, Conservative columnist for The Times, and he wrote that just a few days ago. Johnson always says exactly what gives him laughter and applause at this moment and in front of his audience. How much diplomatic china he smashes is apparently indifferent to him. Whether he appears as a Brussels correspondent, as London mayor, as a leader of the Brexiteers, as foreign minister, or now as prime minister. Yet the partners in the EU and beyond have not forgotten not to forgive him. Not only similar interests, but also mutual trust and mutual respect form the basis of multilateral cooperation in a community of values, especially in one's own neighborhood, where bilateral relations have become more arduous. Johnson, who was courting Donald Trump for a long time, is still in the grief here. With a domestic audience, however, Bojo does not harm his fooling around. On the contrary, Johnson wins a clear majority in the early general election at the end of 2019. The Brexit hardliners in their own ranks and the Northern Irish Unionists are relegated to their place. After "Take Back Control," the ingenious as well as misleading and unrealizable slogan of the Brexit campaign, the "Get Brexit Done" is now effective. In the last few meters, the EU and Great Britain signed a withdrawal agreement in early 2020 and a trade pact in late 2020. Hard Brexit has been avoided, no less, but no more either. There is more paperwork, such as customs formalities for the economy. A little less can now be seen on the supermarket shelves because goods from the EU are missing. But all of this is somehow getting right. And lo and behold, in the local elections a few weeks ago, Johnson and his Tories in England are once again the shining winners. Brexit is kinda through, but Brexit identity politics remains a potent force, the liberal Oxford professor and EU friend Timothy Garton-Ash then aptly analyzes in The Guardian. To this day, the opposition Labour Party has little to offer, especially in its former strongholds in the north of England, where the votes for Brexit have now become votes for the Tories. Nothing, it seems, can harm Johnson. Not the diplomatic fat bowls he steps into, as we would say in German, not the Brexit mess in Dover and elsewhere, not the more than 128,000 COVID deaths in Great Britain, for which he is partly responsible due to his policy in the first months of the pandemic, not the damning testimony that his closest advisor gave him, not the expensive renovation of his official apartment, not supplying party donors with money. As long as Johnson has served the Conservatives the same election victories as before, they will hold on to him. In the game to stay in power, the Conservatives have traditionally been hard to beat. The full name of the Tories, which is often forgotten, is the Conservative and Unionist Party, with particular emphasis on the Union, the alliance of four nations that make up the United Kingdom. A centuries-old but increasingly fragile structure with mutual animosities that are not only evident in the current European Football Championship, and by the way, was a great game between England and Scotland. In 2016, as a reminder, the English and the Welsh people, the majority of whom are voting for Brexit. At the time, the Scots and Northern Irish were in favour of remaining in the EU. They were therefore forced out against their declared will. The Scottish National Party is drumming loudly again to allow citizens to vote a second time on independence. Whether this will ever happen is unclear. Because without the approval of London, Scotland cannot formally become independent, but so far Johnson has been vehemently opposed to accepting the result of a new referendum. And even if this did happen, it would be uncertain whether the Scots would really embark on a new adventure, in which it is completely open whether and how quickly would the country be accepted into the EU. I don't doubt the if, but the length, and whether it would be allowed to keep the British pound or that would have to introduce euros. In the long term, they would have to introduce euros. Johnson is likely to play for time here as well. The more the Brexit situation normalizes, the more people are vaccinated against COVID, the lower the Scots' appetite for independence will be. But I doubt that the Brexit situation will normalize. The situation in Northern Ireland is even more delicate. In the Brexit deal at the beginning of 2020, Brussels ensured that the former province of civil war remains de facto in the internal market, in order to ensure smooth trade with Ireland. In order to reach this agreement, the Prime Minister accepts that there are regulatory hurdles in trade between Northern Ireland and Great Britain from July onwards, which he now, typically Johnson, does not want to implement in time, and he asked the EU for permission already. It is literally about the sausage or trading in the same, but also about the peace process, which even more than 20 years after the Good Friday Agreement is not a surefire success. Bad word for that, I know, but didn't get another. But has to be fought for day after day in the coming together of those loyal to Britain, who tend to support Brexit, and the nationalists who tend towards Ireland, who tend to reject Brexit. Johnson shouldn't underestimate the Northern Irish dynamic, even if a reunited Irish Ireland seems as unrealistic in the short term as a detachment of Scotland. Only in retrospect will historians be able to assess the aftermath of the exit from the EU for this United Kingdom. Perhaps over the decades it makes no difference, politically, economically, culturally, socially, whether Great Britain is in the European Union or not. Many of the supporting institutions, from the royal family to the legal system to the universities, are centuries old. They existed long before EU membership, and they will presumably exist long afterwards. Perhaps other forces like the rise of China are having a much stronger effect than Brexit itself on the global fabric and Britain's role in it. It is and remains sad, however, that it is more difficult for the British to work and study in the EU than it used to be, and vice versa. It is and remains sad that the networking of science is suffering. It is and remains sad that even the cultural exchange has become more complicated due to annoying visa formalities. But even if Brexit has cooled love, it is still difficult to turn away from the UK. This land eventually gave us William Shakespeare and Jane Austen, the Beatles and Oasis, Churchill and Wilson, the afternoon tea and football, the BBC and the Crown. And its narrowest point, the English Channel, the most heavily traveled sea route in the world, is only 34 kilometers wide. The water that separates us should be negotiable. The Brexit island is so far and so close at the same time. And I'll see you in my next video. Auf Wiedersehen.